Found plus lost, lost plus found, found plus lost, lost plus found. Once upon a time there was a overly sensitive sweet little girl as happy-go-lucky as anybody could be. She loved living in her head's la la land and lived loving straight from her in all reality. Don't get me wrong, she made millions of mistakes, double meaning pun intended, and held even more regrets thus far. But all the hatred she had for her most hated actions were absolutely nothing in comparison to the love she got from her mother. Sandra, see, despite being born with a white golden spoon in her mouth, she faced much betrayals. However, she tried her utmost best to be better than those who had hurt. For as long as she forever had her beautiful mother, she would always strive for picture-perfect portrayals, until that dreaded day when she got the call that her mother was calling and rushed to hospital to hear those unthinkable words the doctor had to say. Her mother had only been hospitalized for less than 24 hours for what she thought was nothing more than a fever. So this was the shocker of horrors. As she pulled the curtains and saw her worst nightmare right in front of her, she fell to her knees by the bedside, and despite looking directly at her most horrific sight, she couldn't believe her own eyes. After a while she managed to pick herself up just enough to move over onto the bed, where she took the ventilator mask of her fairy mother's fair face before slowly closing her eyes as she stifled back her own cries. And it was then and there, when she closed her very own mother's eyes, that she became lost in a dark abyss of complete blindness. She had willingly and knowingly entered into a trance where she no longer could phantom a care about anyone or anything in life any longer. Nothing or no one no longer held a chance. How the 6 days till the funeral passed her, she herself doesn't know, and how the day of the funeral changed her, everyone saw, for it did show. After the bandara she became no different from any of the many pillows on her bed. She'd lie down day-night wishing/hoping/praying to be dead. Everything got more and more hard, including what could be considered as the simplest of things, such as getting up and showering, not to mention eating or sleeping, causing her health to get even more bad. She was grateful for those that rallied around her and reached out trying to help her, but it didn't stop the depression from taking its toll on her, which, strange enough, she was somewhat glad to remain sad. See, she, who once beautifully beamed with pure hope plus faith, was now beaming with nothing other than true anger. A few months had passed with her wrath still very much present till she got a present on the first birthday of her mother after, besides her fortunately being able to have dreams of her mummy frequently trying her utmost best to convince her that she was in fact at peace and couldn't be any more safer or happier. She managed to miraculously manifest a once-in-a-million meeting with the moon the late midnight/early morning of her mother's birthday. What started out as just another night where her anxiety and insomnia got the better of the worse of her. She ended up sitting on a chair in her mother's orchid garden, and as she looked up in such an intense stare at the magnificent moonlight that shined right on her, cutting straight across through the stillness and darkness of the night, which was exactly when she was finally able to actually hear what her mother had to say. Moonshine is the first thing she heard, which is what her mother always called her. Then her long-lost smile grew drowning right under the endless tears her tired eyes drew as she silenced the rest of the physical world to listen to the precious long-awaited words from ever so gracious mother. Moonshine, remember how I forever telling you that all your prayers would be answered because my blessings always with you. Well, it's true, God heard you. Where I am, I'm as safe and happy I can be. All I need now is for you to continue on smiling along so I can enjoy my peace till your time is ready. Before she could start to give her reply, the bright moonlight sent a beam straight from the now luminous lit sky down right to between her eyes, if I may say her third eye, and she became no different than a desperate deer caught in the most dazzling headlight. In complete awe she stood up in a sudden stance, staring straight back at the moonlight that overtook the darkness of the night as she listened while her mother continued. If you love me as much as you say you do, then know even now I still will not leave you. But believe me, baby girl, I've left the best of me within you. I'm with you emotionally, mentally, in every way possible, as our love is far too great to merely be physically, and I know your faith in God is shaken, so please, while you carry me with you, then have hold mine. It's yours for the
message. Sarah was exhausted and lay down in bed, tired, weary, and spent with pulling staples from the wooden boards most of the day. As she tried to relax, she couldn't help but think of how different her life would be if her and Ed had chosen the beachfront condo instead. They could be enjoying cool breezes and warm sunshine year-round with zero maintenance on their part. Sarah's husband Ed had been harboring this deep yearning to buy a grand old Victorian mansion. After years of convincing Sarah that he could refurbish an old mansion and flip it, making them financially secure, she finally conceded. They sold their little cottage and purchased a Gothic Victorian fixer-upper that needed a hell of a lot of TLC. Built in 1790 on a secluded lot, the home consisted of 5,000 square feet, with garrets, turrets, dormers, and wide wraparound porches. There were several small rooms with irregular walls. In the back was a rundown stable that also needed a lot of work. Another small structure, away from the house, showed extensive fire damage. Though ornate and charming even in its dilapidated condition, Sarah was hard-pressed to find the motivation that Ed was bursting with to undertake this gigantic project. All in all, it had character, but after 3 months of toiling, Sarah could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. Her love for Ed kept her going, but she was reaching the end of her tether. She wished they could hire a couple people to help them so they could expedite the renovation process and list it for sale as soon as possible. This would allow them to move on to that chic condo she so desired. Sarah fell into a hypnagogic state as she imagined herself sunbathing in the warm rays by the ocean. Sarah was walking by one of the small dark rooms and noticed the little spider plant that was placed in the windowsill had dropped to the floor. She entered the room to retrieve it. As she grasped the fallen roots, the plant grabbed both of her hands and she felt powerless. She tried to free herself but lacked the strength to do so. She looked up helplessly and her gaze fell upon a creeper of flowers on the wall that started singing like a chorus in a hypnotic fashion and lured her into submission. A white stallion approached and whisked her off into an abyss. With a pounding heart, Sarah noticed that they were approaching a vast terrain with rock-like formations and no vegetation. There were a few structures that looked like tall skinny ghosts, white and eerie, with little cutouts that looked like eyes, but no one in sight. The dark ominous sky above was a stark contrast to the pale stone below. There was not a soul to be seen as they rode deeper and deeper into this vast nothingness. The horse was galloping with a mission, steady and determined. Although the moon was not visible, yet the horse could clearly see his way and galloped with an uncanny confidence. Suddenly, Sarah found herself on the harsh cold stone below and the white stallion morphed into an old man with flowing white hair and a long beard. His dark eyes beckoned her attention in a compelling, commanding way. Although shocked by this transformation, Sarah felt no fear. She looked at this man from head to toe, sensing some familiarity. Where had she seen him before? He did not resemble anyone she knew, yet she felt she knew him. He did not utter a single word, he locked his eyes in her gaze and seemed to communicate in this fashion. Sarah felt paralyzed. There was a powerful silence. The silence was broken by a thunderous sound in the skies above, caused by lightning-like waves of lines in vertical and zigzag shapes which illuminated the dark space. The seer then handed Sarah an antique-looking brown package. When Sarah unwrapped the brown package, there was a peculiar contraption which roughly resembled a pendulum. There were 2 parallel wooden hangers with a column in between filled with blue turquoise stones. The turquoise stones glittered when a candle-like flame arose from the center, pointing up, and the seer smiled his approval. With a sleight of hand, the seer turned the flame into a blaze of fire in which Sarah was stunned to see an image of her likeness seated in a chair with hair piled high in a small top knot and pince-nez glasses. She was dressed in period clothing with a handmade shawl thrown over her shoulders and appeared to be from another era. There was something intriguing about this extraordinary vision. This lady appeared to be middle-aged and sat facing a half-painted canvas that was propped by an archaic-looking easel made of wood and metal. The painting depicted figures of birds which seemed to be flying in all directions as if they were searching for something. Sarah was transfixed by this remarkable picture. As she was wondering what all this meant, the seer had a knowing look on his face. Dramatically, the fire expanded around and engulfed this lady who turned into ashes much to Sarah's horror. She